Hello, I'm Margaret Reiber, and today is August 15th, 2023, and I will be interviewing former pastor Jacque Franklin as part of First Congregation's 150th celebration. I've been a member here for about 15 years, I believe. I have served as a Stephen minister, Stephen leader on the MG&O committee and on the Just Peace committee. And I'm here today to interview Jacque Franklin, especially focusing on Just Peace, focus on racism and discrimination and your work in part of all that. And so when First Congregational United Church of Christ of Colorado Springs voted to become a Just Peace church, discussions ensued at our Just Peace meeting regarding the many forms of discrimination and the impact that has on our community. This included racism, sexism, ageism, feminism, and many others. But we decided that maybe the first thing that needed to happen was some study to help us become aware of the discrimination that's all around us and in our community. And subsequently, former pastor Dr. Jacque Franklin preached sermons that addressed these issues, and she promoted scholarly works and books and articles and actually started an online biblical study that was put out by our UCC denomination called Reasons to Have Hope, a Public Health Response to Racism. So as a member of the Just Peace Steering Committee, I was asked to interview Jacque, and she was a very vital player in the Just Peace efforts of our church. Welcome, Jacque. It's great to see you, and you have been a very strong vocal advocate for eliminating racism and discrimination. So as we celebrate the 150th anniversary of our church, it's very fitting that we interview you. What first led you to this justice work, and where did this drive initiate for you?
No, I was thinking about that earlier. I was thinking it has to come from my family because we were very responsive to people who went without. And so it started there, but I think where the racism really took hold for me was in seminary, because I had a mentor, and her name was Eva Bird, and she is still alive. She turned 100 this summer.
Wow!
And so she came up to me and said, "I want to be friends with you."
Oh.
And I guess she saw me as that newbie in seminary with a lot of questions, and but anyway, I learned so much from Eva. Mm-hmm. And we had this group of women that we worked with, we studied with, and even I would go to Cape May because she had a house there. Oh. We'd go to Cape May to study, and I remember we studied New Testament, and of course she aced the test, and I didn't do so well because all I did was listen to her stories about what it was like for her to be a school teacher, and she was married to Temple University professor Van Bird, who's since passed, and so all kinds of interesting, and then just being with her as we, I didn't know what it was called. Now they call it microaggressions, so everywhere I went, I was noticing these things, mm-hmm. and had no idea growing up as a white girl in the Midwest that there was this stuff going on. Mm-hmm. And so that's probably where I first became aware. And then, of course, all my friends in seminary, there was a really wide, diverse population. Yes. I had a really close friend who was Korean, mm-hmm. and she ended up relocating in the same town I did when I first got my first call. And so there were people from Russia and Puerto Rico and Mexico, and and we have this Seminary Sisters group now, mm-hmm. that we meet once
Wonderful.
a month. We still meet once a month.
Wow!
On Zoom. Mm-hmm. So ever since mm-hmm. COVID.
Well, were there certain books or specific authors that ignited your work and to end discrimination and racism in particular?
Oh, yeah, there's a whole bunch. I had to write them down. So when during COVID, I did a class because I had a sabbatical during COVID too. But I took a class called Sacred Conversations to End Racism. And that's with Claire Toomey and Chris Watson.
Yes.
And they're both UCC pastors. And so I got introduced to Ibram Kendi and Charles Mills. Of course, I already knew about Peter Gomes. I'd read his book. And so he's got a great chapter that I use a lot for LGBTQ issues. But he is a black man who is gay, or was. He's now passed too. And of course, I've read Frederick Douglass and Howard Thurman and I was introduced to Mark Charles, who's a Navajo, half Navajo, Dutch background, and he was even on our presidential nominations. So, of course, I don't know how far he got, but anyway, he has these really great videos and interviews that he does around, and this is his book, around unsettling truths. The colonization. So it's the ongoing dehumanizing legacy of the doctrine of discovery. And so I have a couple of sermons that I've used this book primarily as the background, but it was written by Mark Charles and Soon Chan Ra. So yeah, and I think the reason Mark Charles is so significant for me is that I was in tune with what racism was in the United States. I mean, I got more in depth with Sacred Conversations, but I think with Mark Charles, I realized that my Native American heritage had been, silenced.
Yes.
And I got real interested in that, and I've been doing a lot of genealogy around the area of Native American Cherokee background.
Well, no wonder you were such an instrumental part in getting our Just Peace movement here in our church started. All of your reading, and I remember your sermons, and you had a very instrumental part in all this Just Peace. Nationally, what's been the stance of the United Church of Christ denomination with regard to justice work and specifically racism and discrimination?
Well, I think UCC is probably one of the leading denominations when it comes to any kind of just peace and justice work. And, the first to ordain women, ordain people of color, ordain LGBTQ. I mean, it's like UCC is the denomination that is the first to step out, and then others see how we do. We're kind of the guinea pig.
Yes.
And then, but it's part of our identity. And then when they started the whole Just Peace designation, there's a way to work through that, and we did that.
We did
that, and Rich Law was instrumental in that because he brought to the table the nonviolent communication, or the compassionate communication. And I got involved in that. He and I went to a couple of things to workshops and things like that with nonviolent communication.
And it was so helpful for our church at that particular time. And we were blessed to have both you and Rich as strong voices. You were also the driver that brought our online education curriculum, Reasons to Have Hope, a public health response to racism. And it specifically helped deepen our understanding of racism. It certainly did for me. So what led you to that particular choice? Was it the UCC connection?
Yes, because since we were Just Peace, there's a whole section where we can, on the website, that we can link up to other Just Peace churches and see what everybody's been doing.
Yes.
Plus the denomination offers things like this. So there was people who wrote the curriculum for this. And since I had gone through the Sacred Conversations, I thought, well, this will be perfect because, since we're not meeting in person, we can Zoom.
Yes.
We can go on this class that's available for them, and it very similar thing where they would have videos and historical things, and then recommend books and articles, and then the nice thing about that particular curriculum is that they would have these discussion prompters, and then ways in which we can act on it, and then examples about how churches had already acted on this, and how successful they had been with it.
I'm glad you mentioned the fact that it was online and through the UCC website, because I'm always urging people to check out the United Church of Christ Denominations website, because it has a lot of useful information, not on just racism and just peace issues. I'm also reminded of the large painting that you painted that hung in the atrium. It was a painting of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Devin Bailey, Trayvon Martin, Emmett Till, and the 4 little girls who were killed at the Birmingham church bombing. It hung in our atrium at the church, and Jacque, you just absolutely captured their faces perfectly. And the painting was packed with emotion, really. Can you tell us about that process and what you hope to achieve for those of us who had the great opportunity to see it?
Well, during that time, I was on sabbatical, so we were quarantined, and I was doing the Sacred Conversations, and of course all this stuff was happening in the world around us at that time, and it was right after George Floyd had been murdered, and I remember I was watching television and seeing the scenes and everything, and it was just heartbreaking, and feeling just kind of like, what can I do? What can I do? And I thought, well, I'm a painter. I can paint. So it was also the year John Lewis died too. So I had been reading. I have a book on the history of John Lewis, and had been reading about him. And so I have it's a triptych really, and it's American flag on the ends, and the stripes are painted in the color of people, skin color. So the white is not white, it has shadows in it, looks brown and kind of creamy colored, and the red is not red, it's kind of dark brown and reddish colored. So but in the blue field I have a quote by John Lewis about, and I don't have it on me, I should have brought it with me, but maybe we can see it on the picture, but
yes,
I don't have it memorized. But it's his quote that talks about how every generation we have to work towards this.
Yes.
That this is not something that is one and done, but it's something that we continuously have to do. Bring it up every generation. And then the last one is the quote from Conciliation, from the Conciliation Project, where it talks about how there can be no reconciliation until there's conciliation. So we have to recognize how the genocide and led to the to the slavery, and how that continues to be perpetuated in all of our laws and codes and culture.
Yes.
So those are the 2 quotes on the end, and then in the middle, then I started out with George Floyd. I wanted to paint his face because I had seen that, and he's such a remarkable face anyway. And I had been at the Women's March. When my daughter turned 13, we went to the Women's March in Washington, D.C. in 2016, and we were at the section where there were all the mothers, Trayvon Martin's mother, and they were saying, say his name, say his name.
Yes.
And so I was thinking, remember his face.
Yes.
Remember his face. And so I painted his face, and then as I was drawing and preparing for this mural, I thought, oh, it doesn't end here, it doesn't start here. It's been going on forever.
Right.
So, of course, in the same summer was Ahmaud Arbery. And then I was so heartbroken about Devin Bailey.
Yes.
And had been a part of that. So I put all those faces in there. Breonna Taylor. I mean, there were so many people, but these were the people that had captured my attention the most. And Emmett Till, this year it was named a National Historic Treasure.
Yes.
The man who has been working on this, and then there's a woman up in Chicago. The whole process of what happened to Emmett Till. It's been fascinating just to be a part of that history and being.
Yes.
I don't know. I felt like I had to do something, and that's something I could do. I couldn't preach at the time because I was on sabbatical, but I could paint.
Yes, yes. Well, Dr. Franklin, we were blessed that you helped awaken in us our biblical responsibility and urged us to not just study and talk the talk. You changed us, you charged us to do all we can, whenever we can, and wherever we can, to eliminate racism and all forms of discrimination. And I am blessed to have had the opportunity to participate in some of this. And I thank you for letting us interview you and for the wonderful work that you're continuing to do to eliminate all forms of discrimination. Thank you so much.
Thank you.